The paradox of seeing but not seeing. A little over 3 years ago, after attending a national storytelling conference, I was sitting in an airport restaurant. I was on the outside edge. Peripherally, I saw a couple walking slowly out. The closer they got to the exit of the restaurant, I saw it. I saw an airport wheelchair. I looked back at the couple and saw that her husband was making sure that she was standing steady. When they reached the wheelchair, I witnessed how he guided her to sit sideways. And when she was fully seated, her husband then picked her legs up, slowly swung them around so she could sit properly. The man's care for his wife touched me deeply, and I found myself welling with tears. I tried to watch them inconspicuously, but his wife's eyes met mine, and we smiled. They then both came over to me, and the wife said of her husband, quote, "He's a good man." I told her that I was thinking the exact same thing, and that I had imagined that he'd done this, if not hundreds, certainly thousands of times. And she said, "Yes, he has, and thank you for noticing." We then spoke about where we were from. We talked about our families. And at the end, we all shared that there was only one word that could typify what happened between us, and that was the word blessings. And I will share with you that I was deeply touched that afternoon by what I witnessed. But there was also something deeper. In a sense, I was seeing but not seeing. I posted on Facebook at the airport what had occurred and promptly received many comments and even likes. But one like stood out in particular. A friend named Karen Moore reminded me of a man named Byron Trammell, who was my mentor when I was a young youth minister in Allentown, Pennsylvania. Byron had cared for his wife, Barbara, for 30 years with MS. When Barbara died, I flew down to do her funeral. Byron then remarried. He died, I did his funeral, and his second wife, she moved back to Allentown, Pennsylvania, and I participated in her funeral. But what I remembered was my respect for how Byron cared for his wife, Barbara. And then I remembered how my own mother cared for my dad despite all their troubles in marriage, how she cared for my dad from 1972 to 1979 as he suffered from the ravages of cancer. So there I was witnessing this couple at the San Jose airport, deeply moved by their love and even posting about it. Karen reminds me of Byron and Barbara. And then I remember my mother with my father. I was seeing, but not seeing. In Luke chapter 12, it's a story of seeing, but not seeing. Not so much like the story I just shared, but one in which I wonder, is it being played out even today, especially today, between countries, between states, between political parties, and between individuals. So Jesus is approached. "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." Jesus doesn't take the bait. Yes, there were inheritance laws to be applied and may indeed have been applicable in this case. But there is also this. This man seems only to be interested in himself. His beef is the beef of one who sees himself as victim. Again, Jesus doesn't take the bait, but he does talk about greed. He does remind the man questioning him that life is not about what one has. But how does Jesus do this? What Jesus does is amplify. What Jesus does is tell a story of a very affluent person. And the only word to describe this person was a person who had more than enough, a person who was replete with riches, a person who was luxuriant in lifestyle, and a person who had a superfluity of abundance. Now, please note that Jesus is not critical of the man having riches. In verse 15 of chapter 12, Jesus had already encouraged the people just to be on guard. So consider the rich man. Money, no problem. Servants, no problem. Homes, no problem. All the computers and technology one needs, no problem. Maybe he's got the best family, a wife, and 2.6 children. No problem. Maybe he attends the most fashionable synagogue, church, or mosque in town. No problem. Maybe he sends his kids to reputedly the best schools. No problem. For this person in this parable, life is really good. In fact, it could not be any better. Maybe he asserts that he is great at everything and the world is indeed his metaphorical oyster. That the power he has is just fantastic. But a question: does he think about others? Does he think about those whose stations of life are different than his own? They might not have the best house, the fanciest car, the most beautiful wife, or the greatest family, or the best mind. But he does. And so for him, life becomes about ease. You have plenty of grain laid up for many years. Take it easy. Eat. Drink. Be happy. This person who sees so much for himself also does not see. He or she does not see that life is not about yourself. Life is not about gathering everything in one's path and either hoarding it or boasting about it. And they don't see that there is someone watching, someone who had everything and gave it all up. He gave up power. He gave up glory. He gave up equality with God to become like us in this room. Maybe this is why Jesus is upset with those who focus only on themselves, that what they are doing is so contrary to the example that he set. He is the one who fed the 5,000 with so little. He is the one who showed the disciples how to love the other. And he is the one who showed them how to treat the Samaritan woman with dignity. No, to see that which we are incapable of seeing is to open ourselves to the way of Jesus, the way of not being about self, The way of not being about filling our coffers without recognizing that others' coffers also need filling. For at the end, when that time comes for all of us, what will it be that lasts? Our possessions? Our comfort? Our sense of power? Or is it what God calls all of us to? Love and loving service to the other. Years ago, I learned a phrase from this pulpit or in Bible class. It wasn't from Chris Altrock. It wasn't from Brandon. It wasn't from Ken Durham. It was from Dale Pauls. And the phrase was this: God calls us to a task. What God does not call us to is a status. And that phrase is as true now as I heard it 30 years ago. But today I would add that God also calls us to see beyond ourselves. And for me, that's the paradox. In not seeing ourselves in everything, there may be more space for God to fulfill in us. In not seeing ourselves in everything, there be more space for God to fulfill in us. And that was this guy's problem in the parable. So in this upcoming season of holy days, beginning with Thanksgiving, may we embrace the example of Jesus. Embrace that life is not just about yourself. Embrace that life is also about others and about the other. Embrace that life is also not about what we possess. Embrace that which is unseen. And embrace God's love for you, for us, for the world. The one who has ears to hear sometimes needs time to hear. And the one who needs to see sometimes needs time to see. May that be so for you, and may that be so for me.